Hey everybody, my name's Marty Bright. I'm a comedian, spoken word artist, event production specialist, and community-minded spiritual seeker.
Marty, brother, it is such a pleasure to finally do this chat with you. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, a lot of procrastination and
Yes.
missing each other with time
Yeah.
zones and
And just timing, bro. I think just timing as well with life and the craziness that it is and what we've been having all over the world. So tell me, man, what's been happening for you in the last, how long now? 5 months? 6 months?
give me a smaller window because that's a long podcast.
All right, let's go the last 2 months. I'll just kind of touch on, we were both gonna be in South America this year. You left in, was it February?
Early March, I came
March?
to New Zealand.
Yeah. And then we were going to meet up with each other, I think around June or so for South America, which obviously has not gone the way it had planned out to be. But now you're still in NZ, and I've been seeing you've been doing shows over there and traveling all over. So what's been happening? What's the latest with you in the last couple of months, 2 months, 3 months?
My method of catching up with people that I haven't caught up with for a long time is I came up with this method of, if it's been too long to actually try and summarize it well, you just go backwards. So you just start with what you did today. And then
I like that.
Often you realize you can know a lot about what someone's been up to if you just ask them what they're doing today.
Yeah.
So tonight I've got tickets to go watch professional wrestling,
nice.
Amateur professional wrestling in a town called Invercargill, which is on the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand. Now, I just had a couple of days where I wasn't doing any performances, and I just Googled what's on in the area. Yep. And so my 10-year-old inner child said, "Oh yeah, I want to go watch some. I want to watch some guy." And I got a front row ticket, which is like sometimes they like fall into the crowd and stuff. So that's just a bit of a like a bit of a random activity to keep me honest and make sure that I'm, not staying in only artistic or like spiritual echo chamber type communities. Actually make sure I go out there and do some random kind of random wild stuff.
Yeah.
And so after tomorrow I'll be driving to Dunedin further south, and I'm going to be doing a comedy show there. In Dunedin, and then I'll keep driving back up to the North Island, and I've got some great opportunities up there to do some performances, run some workshops, get involved with some more. You kind of need to be in one place if you really want to get involved in some community activity. Yeah. So that's the plan, is to just stay in one place for a little bit up near Auckland-ish area.
Yeah, mad, bro. That's epic. Bro, I really wanted to kind of go into the beginning of comedy for you. Like, how did it all begin? And the spoken word poetry. Like, how'd that all begin for you? I'm just a funny man.
Well, I mean, the thing I would say, you asked me to introduce myself before, and you recorded it for the podcast. And there's a phrase I like to use. I think I might have told you before, but people often ask me like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I tell them all the things that I've done, spoken word, poetry and comedy and running events, and, I've worked with children in like education settings for like a decade, people with disabilities and youth work. So I just like to call myself a professional human.
I love that.
Because everything I do, all my income streams are based on me turning up and being myself, which is actually kind of accidental. I just and to be honest, it's probably comes a lot from something that I'm realizing that I've had my whole life. And I think I took it for granted a little bit. I just have a really supportive, unconditionally loving family that never told me I had to do anything, never even hinted, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so freeing because so many people have to, they butt heads when it's like, I want to be an artist. And they're like, but I thought you were going to be this, or I thought you were going to take over the family cracker factory or something.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, what you're kind of saying is you've been able to have, I guess, that self-validation really inside yourself to be able to go and do all these things, because I find that a lot of us human beings will be faced with our own like fears of being that complete version of ourselves, and it's only until we start doing the work that we uncover these certain layers and aspects of ourselves that maybe we were when we were a kid or we're afraid to be, and we're taking those masks off.
So I there's a friend of mine a very close friend of mine who lives in Newcastle, and we have quite deep chats about our existence and our purpose, and in a humorous way, but we always talk about the hamster wheel and how we've stayed off the hamster wheel. And I know that I'm privileged to be able to have a choice to be like, I want to talk for a living. That's just unheard of in some countries.
Yeah.
But the I haven't been to university. I've never had a full-time job. I've only ever had I've worked full-time hours, but I've never been in a contract. I have no debt.
Yeah.
And I don't have a mortgage. Not that those are bad things. Everyone uses those as tools. But for me, I just always knew that for my personality, I'm suited not on that hamster wheel. Yeah. And because, like I said, I've got the family behind me, not necessarily pushing me, but just saying like, okay, we trust you. And, you were talking about starting comedy, and you said having that self-validation. It's like I do get nervous about performances or how well I'm going to do at something, but never. It's virtually never based on how someone else is going to think about me. I don't know what it is about my upbringing, but for some reason, when I was in high school, I was unbullyable because I just didn't care what anyone thought about me. Yeah. And it might have seemed at the time like, maybe threatening or something like that, but they just moved on quickly because they realized I didn't, not going to get the rise out of me. So the reason I'm mentioning that is like, I feel lucky to have never really cared. I mean, I care what individuals that I respect think of me, or people in my relationships, but on a level of walking in front of a room, talking into a microphone, and having a group of people go, oh, I bet he's a bit. I'm like, cool. I mean, that's I don't know if that's answering the question.
No, that answers my question.
That's like perfectly. why that seed had such fertile ground around it.
Yeah. So, because it's really interesting, because I come from the other kind of area where I was bullied in high school, and I copped it, man. Well, not even in high school. It was on the bus on the way to high school and back home. And so this was when I lived up near Byron Bay, because I was the city kid coming to the country. And I think that's where a lot of my kind of, caring what other people think came from. Or maybe like, growing up in my family, kind of like my mum was a superwoman. She looked after 3 kids and had sisters and stuff, or have sisters and stuff. But back then, I think that would have been tough for her. But going back to what I was saying, that fear of what other people think plagued me for a long time. And it's only as I've gotten older, as I've done the deep diving, as I've learned to be more vulnerable, learned to share more and find out more about who I am and what I'm capable of, that it's kind of released. But there's still like aspects like, because I think, fuck, getting up on stage and trying to make people laugh, like, what if I don't make them laugh? But
Yeah.
I guess you would just take that in the good stride and kind of laugh about that yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I'm hearing you speaking about your experience, and um, it's making me think back. And there was a time when there was like a period where I felt like I was like, I'm catching myself. And think there was a period where I was quite concerned with what people thought of me. And it was almost came from like, I found myself having a feeling then when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, was me speaking my truth making someone else around me feel like they had like they didn't have something I had, or that they felt like they had a rougher time than me, or and kind of holding that mirror up of like, so I think there was a time in my life where I was like subconsciously dimming my light, and how short, and how sure of myself I am in some ways, because I didn't want people around me to be feeling like a reflection of that, which is like, oh, well, I didn't fucking, or like, well, fuck him for he's just cocky, and it's only been in the last few years where I've really lent into that and just been like, yeah, like, I don't, I don't have to dim my light just because others around me.
No, exactly.
But I have definitely tried to learn how to, uh, be sharing my light in a tactful way. Yeah. It's not brazen. It's still considerate. It's not, walk into a room and just like,
yeah.
Because someone might be telling a story, or someone might be having a hard time, and that level of tactfully showing your light is, I think, a balance that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. I think that's one of my lessons that I've been learning probably this year, since the start of the year, is learning how to balance and kind of communicate with people from all walks of life, no matter, there's like, you've got spiritual seekers, you've got people on the surface that are just happy, doing what they're doing, and that's fine, but being able to kind of know. Sorry?
Running on the hamster wheel.
Yeah. And it's okay, like, to be able to navigate and be like, okay, I can see where they're at. Okay, look, how can I just communicating to fucking every individual, really. And even with myself, with balance in certain other areas, like what I'm eating, or, if I will, I don't want to say indulge, but if I go out for a friend's birthday and have a couple drinks, or, just knowing when to kind of reel things back and balance myself out again. It's just been a massive, massive new lesson, because I was always going to one extreme to another.
Yeah. I mean, for an example, last night I went and played my ukulele at an open mic in a really like busy, loud pub. And that was like a bucket list thing for me, because I've only just started, learning a few instruments.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and part of me said, turn around, go home. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. It's good to feel quite nervous about something, to keep myself in check and bring that humility back, start from zero with something. Yeah. And, on the surface level, it was quite a, just your average pub, people eating schnitzels and having beers. And, there may have been a part of me in a previous time, few years ago maybe, where I would look in and go, nah, they probably won't pick up what I'm putting down, so I won't go there. And it was nice to just lean away from that completely and just be like, you know what, I'm going to get my purple ukulele on stage, and maybe I'm going to suck, and I'm just going to own it. And then, for example, if I didn't go in there, I wouldn't have seen, there was like a 10-year-old girl that got stage fright because she was playing ukulele for the first time in front of people, better than me, by the way.
Yeah.
She got halfway through a song, and then she didn't want to continue, and she kind of like started crying to her mum. and then she got back on. Her dad held the chords up for them, and the whole crowd stopped their conversations and clapped along. And it was just, you know, a nice human family community moment that if I listened to that little voice that maybe existed more in the past of like, oh, it's a bit of a, you know, mainstream kind of pub and everyone's just drinking, they don't care about the show. I would have missed a moment like that.
Yeah.
You know, so that was just an example of balancing out.
Yeah.
Going to those extremes of like spiritual seeking or self-growth and just be like, hey, it's just a pub. They're just people. Let's just hang out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Nice, man. Nice. How do you find, like, what's the process for you when you're up on stage? Like, I'm thinking, since of what you said before, that like you wouldn't even think about it really, like other than like a tiny bit of nervousness, but is there a certain...
Depends what I'm doing.
Yeah. So what...
Are you talking about one specific like type of performance or just in general?
I would say comedy, bro. Just because I think that seems the most daunting for myself. And I know like I know a lot of people that have said that they'd love to get up on stage and do comedy, but they're just like, oh, no.
A lot of people really want to give it a go. I think it's a more of a household with Netflix and YouTube these days. Stand-up comedy is a lot more absorbed as an art form.
Yeah. And
it's not as limited. It's not like just in like jazz lounges and comedy clubs. People are seeing it everywhere. It's more normalized now.
Yeah.
I've actually started doing some comedy writing mentorships with some new comedians who I've met over the last few years and over the last maybe 6 months. And that's been really nice to kind of fall in love with it again through the eyes of people that are just kind of getting their first 5 minutes of material together.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's going to push me towards a more, you know, like art therapy or transpersonal counseling kind of pursuit sometime in the future. But yeah, as far as getting on stage, my process is in no way, shape or form the norm, but I think because I've been doing it for so long, there's a level of like, for example, you know, let's say, what's a famous band that still exists that people know? I'm going to show my age here. I'm like, let's say the Oasis. No. But, you know, okay, let's say Oasis, right? That's just a classic band that everyone knows, but not everyone loves. Let's say, like, see how many times has that guy played Wonderwall?
Mm.
So the more he plays it, the better he is at it. The better he is at it, he can riff. He can change something in the middle because he's got his muscle memory lock, or he's got that muscle memory that knows, oh, okay, I've got this.
Yeah.
And so when he starts to maybe puts the guitar down and then he wants to read a poem, that's like maybe the equivalent of me picking up the ukulele.
Yeah.
So as far as being on stage at the moment, for me, my my pre-show, I don't really prepare because I think I'm actually better when I don't prepare.
Yeah.
And I let my fight or flight instincts remember the jokes and, you know, chat to the crowd and, oh, what should I, you know, it adds a bit of spontaneity to it.
Yeah.
But some people can't do that. Some people need to know because they need those parameters. You know, it's like some people need that. Some people need Google Maps on from the moment they leave home, even if they know the way.
Yeah.
And other people go, I know the way. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Well, some people are like, I'll put the maps on, but I'm not going to put the voice on.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that way. How do you
some people hitch them.
Yeah. How do you come up with your material?
I've heard some comedians, like big professional comedians, talk about how much they write. And that's like Jerry Seinfeld and guys like that, or people like that. And they say they write religiously every single day. And I don't do that. I'm actually probably pretty damn lazy when it comes to writing. But when ideas come to me, I write them down. I don't ever sit in front of a desk and go, it's writing time. I feel that's quite for my level of discipline, which is questionable, I write things when it flows. And I also am not just a comedian. So, you know, those guys, a lot of interviews I've seen, guys like Jerry Seinfeld's like, that's all he ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I've always known I want to do other things. So I balance out my creative time between different art forms.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. How, being that you've been traveling in NZ, what's been the highlights for you over the last 3 months? Or even the whole trip.
I would say number one is kind of this feeling of I've gone back in time and visited some of my, both my parents are from here. And so there's a lot of, you know, extended relatives I haven't seen in a long time, / maybe have never met, or gravestones of grandparents that I have relationships with, or that I never met because they passed away before I was born. So I kind of feel like I'm doing a lot of healing on behalf of my family here.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm, like I said, one of the advantages of not being on that wheel is that it feels like my duty to the family. It's like if I'm gonna follow this kind of inflow state of being, with being an artist and a bit of a nomad for now, not forever. I don't think it's any coincidence that I'm here where I have family roots and that I can, you know, in some instances heal some trauma that's happened, not even some grief in the family. And I'm sending photos back to dozens of relatives all around the world and say like, hey, I'm at the gravestone of the person who, you know, whose funeral we were at the last time we saw each other. Like, I'm going to say hi on your behalf. So, yeah, I mean, there's been some, without being indulgent with story time, there's been some moments that have come closest to like the most tangible I can touch spiritual experiences in my life since I've been here.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I remember we were having a conversation about that. That was a couple of months ago. You're saying just the synchronicities were lining up for you, like just one after the other.
Yeah, it almost went past the level of synchronicity where I was like, wow, it's synchronized, or that's something just happened, and it's, you know, out of the level of comprehension of how well something lined up. Yeah. Now I'm just like, yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
That's not livable anymore. That's just the way it happens.
That's what I find is like when I've been traveling overseas, especially if I've been on my own and kind of set my own journey without like really a dead set locked in plan, that I'll find that those things along the way will start happening more and more. And it's like, if I planned it, it wouldn't have been the same. You know, it's okay to have a loose plan, but having like something just so set, I think you don't allow those new opportunities to come through and come into your life.
Yeah. And, you know, at the moment, more than ever, the whole kind of idea of Western people, you know, people from developed countries traveling is a privilege. And, you know, I hear a lot of that, a lot of people saying like, oh, maybe it's a thing of the past. And, you know, we should have never been doing it to begin with, because look at all the plane exhaust and all that stuff, which is all that, they're all valid points.
Yeah.
But considering that with all this world kind of the challenges the world's facing at the moment, the fact that I've landed somewhere familiar, but also it's familiar in a way because my roots are here, but it's also unfamiliar because I haven't spent much time here.
Yeah.
Instead of me being like, well, I should feel privileged, so I won't do it, I'm like, hey, I'm the lucky few, so I'm going to do it in your honor.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and do it the best I can.
Yeah. You went and did some, what type of training was it? I know it was something in relation to the Māori culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What was that like?
So what it was a 2-day introductory wanana, which is like a Māori word for teaching, communal teaching and sharing. And the main aspect of the Māori culture that was the focus was rongoa, which is, the word has so many definitions, but specifically what they were focusing on was they're trying to, this particular, it was on a marae, which is, you know, like the land that the Māori consider to be their tribal land in the current day. And so the purpose of the weekend was trying to plant seeds to re-educate the Māori and also the non-Māori people in New Zealand about the use of native plants here to heal and to act as medicine. And so they're trying to keep that alive. I mean, you can imagine some of the native tribes around the world who have had their, medicinal practices outlawed or just, wiped out. And because Māori have a different history in terms of how overrun they were by the colonizers, there's a little bit more, there is some meaty knowledge here that people are trying to kind of awaken in people.
Yeah, nice.
So it was really powerful. And I got to sleep on the marae inside the big, I don't know the word for it, but I'm going to say hall, or the equivalent of say like a temple. Where we do their equivalent of mass, and I should probably go and learn these words. It was great.
Is that where like you'll get everyone that's like pretty much you're all sleeping together in the not like sleeping together, but like, sleeping together like next to each other in that big hall?
Yeah, there weren't too many people, because there are also houses. And some people just drove home and stayed home that night. But there was 7 or 8 of us who slept in this really impressive building with, stone carvings just like staring at you like, ah.
Yeah, man.
Like in a great way. Like, yeah, like you're protecting me, because I was invited onto this land and it was all done, and we did the intro and we connected in with the ancestors. So I feel like I've been invited here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What so with what you're saying about introducing the plants back in and the ancient practices, were there plants basically for healing on physical levels or all levels, emotional, mental?
From what I've learned so far, the Māori approach to medicine, as a lot of native cultures around the world, indigenous cultures around the world, it's both. There's no separation. The outlook on life is of the emotion. It's linked. It's not. There's no body here and emotion here. It's like this is all working constantly at with each other. So it's a lot more preventative. It seemed like the medicinal kind of practices that I started to learn about seemed a lot more preventative. It's like, have this, you won't have this. Cool.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I've got this, quick, drink this. Too late.
Yeah, that's mad. So it's not anything like going down the realm of, the Amazonian medicines like ayahuasca, San Pedro, etc.
I didn't learn anything about those, but I have no doubt that there are equivalents, but I haven't come across them yet. It was in a quite wholesome.
Yeah, beautiful.
It was given in quite a wholesome. Not that ayahuasca, is not a wholesome plant, but I think the course was tried. They attempted to give it a nice accessible feel, and didn't want to, walk before you can run kind of.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go like shove all these spiritual, all
Here you
these
go.
like
Get that in. Get that in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, what dimension am I in now? Yeah, awesome.
But it was great. Really, really enjoyed it, and definitely going to make some more effort to learn Tereo, which is the Māori language. And
yeah, nice.
Yeah, just do more connecting with the community in that way.
Yeah, beautiful. What has been some of the best things that you've seen since you've been there? The sites in NZ are like supposed to be epic, man. I've been wanting to get over there, but because it's so close, you always leave like the close ones till later, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm 60 years old now. I haven't been to New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've pretty much done most of the country other than the wild west coast, and Golden Bay, which is an area where I've been told that if I go there, I'm not going to leave. So I'm leaving it to have a lot of time to stay there.
Yeah.
But yeah, driving to Queenstown from Christchurch was amazing. Just seeing these giant, snowy, just towering mountains, and you're like, oh my God, I'm meaning, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I splashed my face in Lake Tekapo.
Yeah.
And that was just great. Just fresh, icy water. I heard the voices of all my friends who do like Wim Hof being like, do it.
And you just splashed your face. It's good enough. Tick. Yeah. Tick. Yeah. I think I had a mate years ago who like went for a mad swim there. He was like the only one. He's a Māori boy. And it's like, yeah, there were so many people there, and they were all like, what the hell is this guy doing? It's like, oh yeah, it's fresh. It's fresh.
I'm sure if I did it, I would have not regretted it.
Yeah.
But it was really cold. Like,
yeah, I can't do the painfully cold.
Yeah, I've seen Titanic too many times. I'm like,
pass.
Yeah.
What do you think has been your biggest challenge while you've been away?
For the first, in 3 days, I will be in New Zealand for 6 months. And for the first 3 or 4 months of those, I was having quite consistent knee pain because I re-inflamed a soccer injury just before I left. And it was like really bumming me out, like, because I just wasn't as active. I couldn't be as active as I wanted to be. And just basic stuff like going for a walk was like, going for a walk around the block during lockdown was even hard. Yeah. So I was, facing a lot of demons about, imagining how mobile I'm going to be when I'm older. And I did a lot of like self-healing. I read a book on like Hawaiian self-healing practices, and I was meditating a lot and just like pouring my love into my knee and, just trying to give my body the best chance to heal with the power of this, but also just time. So in some ways the lockdown was really good for me because I got to then travel after I had rested for the 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But even then it wasn't perfect, and it actually something clicked, and then it just felt fine the day before I went to that Māori medicine course.
Oh, wow.
And I was like fully receptive to all the information.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, or they went for a walk around the gardens they have there, the land they have there, not gardens, like the expansive land they have. And we were walking in the mud. The day after, it clicked and something just suddenly felt, not as good as new, but it was just suddenly a level of no discomfort.
Yeah.
And I was walking around the grounds with my shoes off being like, oh my God. Whereas if it didn't click that day, I would have had this kind of shadowy cloud potentially stopping me be super receptive to that information. So that was an example of one of those times where it was just like so synchronistic and aligned. But yeah, I think the physical, I also had some really bad toothaches, and I've realized I went to a dentist in New Zealand. I had to get, I've had 3 of my 9 cavities filled. So I was actually just in a lot of physical pain.
Yeah. Wow.
So the physical has been the biggest challenge.
Yeah. When you said that your knee clicked, that something clicked? Did you mean like your knee clicked, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute, or did you mean like something just clicked?
Yeah, I heard it click.
Oh, cool. Because my knee hasn't clicked yet, bro. I'm still having issues with it. It got good for a while, and then I was like, oh, I'm worried about going overseas. And then it had gotten better. And then when the pandemic hit, I started doing construction work. I was doing demolition work. It's not the funnest. But I did that, and then I had a massive day, like up and down stairs, bricks, lifting heavy stuff. And then I went home and trained my legs, being like, nah, I need to train. And then the next day, after I'd trained that day, my leg was super inflamed. And then I've had to go to physio pretty much since. Had to get an MRI on my knee and everything like that. Strained the ACL. Strained, yeah.
Okay, well, if there's no tear, I mean, let's not. We won't turn this into a a physio session with someone that's not qualified. But I have had a lot of knee injuries, so I kind of feel like of all the people that doesn't have a physio qualification and doesn't have any type of medical certification, I've been around the block with knees. There's a reason why old guys. They put the old guys on the lollipop, like your body ages.
Yeah.
You get older and you're not as mobile. But obviously when we're younger than we expect, when that happens, we're like, oh. Yeah. And the thing I just had to hit my chest and be like, cool. Ask myself, do you care that your body's in pain? Yes, I do. Okay. Do you want it to stop? Yes, I do. Okay. Then you have to do everything possible to heal this in a way that is sustainable and realistic. And if you have to pay, if I have to pay money to do that, so be it. And, things like ligaments and things like, I'm all for herbal, medicinal, holistic approaches to a lot of things. But ultimately, if you've torn a ligament, there is a certain level of just owning up to it and be like, cool, I got to get on a waiting list for surgery, or I've got to fork out the money and get an expert surgeon to fix it. And there's that level of adulting that I've had to do here because I've been over here by myself that is also been really empowering.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. It's cool. How long do you think you'll be in NZ? No.
I don't see myself coming back before the end of the year. I feel like I kind of want to spend a summer here.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to I'm already kind of I'm involved in the pre-planning process for a few like festivals over here.
Yeah, cool.
One called Earth Beat, another one called The Mix, another one called and just bringing my gifts to those festivals that, won't have internationals going to them and they won't have international acts coming in probably. So really getting involved in those communities, not just doof party festivals, but, social change, transformational getaway weekend type festivals. But yeah, so my older sister's pregnant actually. So that might be, a mid next year. I want to come back, but also, the powers that be also have a bit of control right now with where we can and can't go. And I'm not, I don't have any major reason to have to try and fight with that.
Yeah.
If I did, then I can come home. But right now it's, probably a potentially another 6 months.
Cool. What's the pandemic been like over there?
I mean, I don't. First of all, no one really uses that word over here. Not that they can't, but maybe that word doesn't have as much relevance to what the lockdown was like here, because the 6 weeks where people couldn't go out was really hard, but generally people were really obedient. And, I think a lot of, not everyone, but a lot of New Zealand citizens generally trust their government, or a bit more than a lot of other countries. So they're like, all right, they did it begrudgingly, but everyone just stayed home. And, with some exceptions. And then they just slowly eased off the case. It was essentially, we're not lifting the lockdown until there's 0 cases.
Yeah.
And there's 0 cases for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think there has been, I've heard murmurs that there has been some cases around, but they're, changing the way that they're dealing with it.
Yeah.
But, life is pretty much back to the normal way here. The only difference is that there's, nothing coming in, people or money.
Yeah.
Tourism.
Yeah.
But the vibe is great. Like the vibe, the energy is amazing. And I am really, optimistic and hoping that some other places around the world get to feel this soon.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the swing back for some countries, not going to say country, the swing back for some people who are going to end up being affected by this for longer than others, there's, and I can't speak from an authority on a political level, but if there comes a time when life is back to normal, even on your town level or your state level, even then is just such a feeling of community camaraderie to look forward to.
Yeah. It's weird here because I find that I'll say in Sydney especially, it's like this feeling of anticipation, because Victoria's copping it and they're in like stage 4 lockdown, can't go outside, have curfews, have mandatory mask wearing with fines if they're not wearing a mask. And in Sydney it's like, oh yeah, things are good, but it's like there's an itch that that's there that you want to scratch, but it's like, I don't know.
What's that itch?
That itch is it feels like something's, going to happen soon, but it's not happening yet.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting in New Zealand. I was kind of like, when they said level 4, I was just like, great, like, I can do that. I don't think I could do the gray area. And in fact, my family have been very black and white with it. But they, the lifestyles they live were easier to actually just say, okay, for example, they were doing level 4 lockdown restrictions in our house 2 weeks before anything was legal.
Yeah, well.
And not everyone has to do that, because not everyone can do that, etc. But like, look, it's just such a rabbit hole of a conversation, because some people don't even believe that it exists. Some people, have just got different layers of, alternative viewpoints on it. And, number one thing, I think the number one thing that for people to do is keep their minds and bodies as healthy as they can.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think anyone can deny that that's like a really good starting point.
No, not at all. And I think, we still need to be just kind to people. A lot of people, it kicks up that mad stink with people, all this division that's kind of, you can see happening. It's like, we need to just be kind to one another. That's it. Everyone's got a different perception and perspective of how they live life. And if we can do that and just understand that we're all human beings, it's a way forward, I guess.
But you know, those switches on the wall of, oh, I'm going to switch from being judgmental to being kind. Not many people, there's not too many people that have a switch that just goes.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they got a whole wall of switches, and they all need to be turned off in a very special sequence, so you can actually turn off the, you know, so you can actually then turn off the judgment, hate, you know, the judgment divisive thing. But like, imagine if every time you attempted to, this is a convoluted analogy, but it's like, imagine every time you went to flick off all your emotional switches that then, like, they lead to your lack of judgment and feeling kind. You get one go to get the order right, and then they go, no. And then they change, and then you change the order.
Yeah.
Like, that's how hard it is for some people.
Yeah.
They can
100%.
never quite get it, even though they'd love to be kind, they'd love to be happy, but the circumstances they're in, you know, I was even just going to do a role play with you then when you're like, you're going to be kind to other people. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going to be that guy. I'd be like, okay, cool. I got 5 kids. I'm working 10-hour days. You know, I might, you know, drink a lot. I like so many barriers. And then this is just like the ultimate level of restriction. And so people can, you know, people can start to justify having feelings of negativity or hate or.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The unseen enemy.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's one thing to act on those feelings, and it's another thing to be able to just sit with it. But at the same time, like, you know, if people don't have outlets, then, you know, it can cause explosions, I guess.
Yeah. I remember one thing that one of the teachers at the course that I went to on the Marae in Auckland, very strong, powerful medicine woman, one of her life mantras is whānau first, which means family. She just said family first. And I mean, a lot of people use that in other ways for different agendas, but it was like, you know, you're throwing a rock into a, if we're trying to help, we're trying to show up in positivity in the world. And that analogy is like throwing a rock into a lake. It's like the ripples from that splash, they get smaller as you get further away from you.
Yeah.
So the ripple closest to you, that's your circle of people. That's your community, and or lack of a community, which you might have to deal with. But, you know, that first ripple is where I can really dig in. And that's why, for example, like doing some of this healing on a family level here is really important for me, because I feel it's now freeing me to then step into the next ripple, which is maybe a community thing. And then maybe like in my life, that's going to be, you know, how I show up in a family setting. But if I didn't do that healing on that family level, then like you said before about the itch, scratch, it's like, it's always there, you know, tugging at your pant leg, being like, hey, you haven't looked at me yet.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to save the world? You haven't even saved your inner child yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think continue.
No, I was just going to say I might have to wrap it up in a minute or two.
Well,
but I'd like you have to say, I'd like to hear your Jerry Springer's final thought.
Jerry Springer's final thought. Take care of yourself and each other. Yeah. I was going to say with the family thing, one thing I've realized is that, you know, over the period of work that I've been doing for the last, I don't know how long now, 6 years or something, but having times where, you know, I cut my brothers out of my life, I cut my dad out of my life, and having 2 years of just like, you know, holding that resentment, but then moving past it and being able to come to a point of developing myself and having them come back into my life and being able to voice where I was. And then now I've created like this epic relationship with my dad where it's like proper father-son relationship, which I never really had. I mean, he was always there, but it wasn't like it is now. We've got a really strong bond, and all my other kind of relationships in my family, I try to get to a deeper level. But you know, you can't have it all at once. Like, you know, it's just all about being patient and giving it a good crack.
Yeah. Well, I think that sounds like a good thing to, you know, you didn't get to go to South America, but, you know, not yet anyway.
Not yet. It'll happen.
But you know what?
Too, yeah.
Yeah, you're now closer to your family here to dig those, like you did that just then.
Yeah.
You know, dig that in a bit harder and really like put those roots into those relationships. So even if you do go to South America in a couple of years, those relationships are just so solid and have so much closure.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be getting on the plane being like, hey, cool, it's been real. I might never see you again. And I would have no regrets.
Yeah. That's where I feel it's kind of leading, like, you know, the stuff with the course and the stuff with family, some friends, being able to give back to myself with having more time for myself now. You know, whereas before for like 4 years, it was just work, 50 hours a week, drive. But now, it's
well, it's a great time to rebuild and remodel from the ground up.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
A lot of people are starting from zero. I'm gonna wrap it up, dude.
Cool, bro. Awesome, bro. Thank you so much for doing this. It's a pleasure to speak to you as always. I know we've been wanting to do this for ages. Is there any other message you'd like to share or anything else you'd like to share before we go?
No, I'm going to go watch some professional wrestling. And hopefully the people that have been listening to this got something out of it. Maybe they didn't even make it to this point. And if they didn't, boo.
Sweet as, brother. Well, everyone, as always, make someone smile today. You never know what something so small can do something so big. I always say that wrong and right at the same time. Keep on keeping on. Go gently. Much love. Marty, thank you again, brother.
Hey, man.